Member for Période South and Leader of his party.
Mr. Speaker, in the event that we don't sit for the next 3 months in this House, I've got some questions following up on some earlier commitments made by the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs. She said she'd like to see First Nations share in the royalties from natural resource use by industry back in April, citing what she called existing best practice models in Alberta, Manitoba and Ontario. However, she said that she had not spoken to anyone from the major forestry companies about her idea. Mr. Speaker, it's not any of the business of those companies if government shares resource royalties with First Nations. As Greens, we've actually gone further and said the government should be replacing its unilateral approach to forest management on Crown lands with a co-management system with First Nations. However, does the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs believe she has to get permission from J.D. Irving before she acts, or has she moved forward on her proposal for royalty sharing?
The Minister of Aboriginal Affairs in the gallery.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the question. And I actually take great offense if you think this government has to get permission from anyone with respect to making things better for First Nations. If you've been following what's happening with respect to this file, you will note that in April, this government reached out to all leaders of First Nations in the province, asked them to come to the table and negotiate a fair, reasonable partnership based on good economics and based upon them sharing in the resources and the opportunities in this province. That option was on the table in April. We met with MTI, a number of groups. Those negotiations are ongoing. We hope to have the same principle moving forward with the Wolastoqey. Thank you.
The member for Période South and Leader of his party.
Mr. Speaker, back in June, the Premier and the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs committed to get to the bottom of what they called the Indian Day schools that operated in the province before Confederation to 1992. At the time, the Minister admitted that she had only spoken to one chief on the matter. In September, the Maui Council, headed by Chiefs Aaron Sock of Elsipogtog, Alvary Paul of Escanobidich, and Ross Purley of Nagotakuk, called on the government to see Indigenous involvement to get on with seek Indigenous involvement to get on with the investigation. For the past 6 months, there's been radio silence on any progress towards investigating the day schools. Will the Minister tell us if there's been any progress at all since she and the Premier committed to investigating the day schools back in June?
The Minister of Aboriginal Affairs in the gallery.
Mr. Speaker, thank you again for the question, and there actually has been progress. There's been correspondence going back and forth between the government as well as the First Nations leaders in the province, and we actually do want to move on with these initiatives. There's been 5 requests coming from First Nations, and we want to move ahead with those initiatives, but we actually want to move collaboratively in a partnership with them. So once that occurs, once we come to the table, we'll start working on those. Thank you.